Department of English, Manikeswari University. Welcome you all again on the second day of the National Seminar organized by the Department of English on Nation, Nationality and Nationalism in a Globalized World, Negotiating Citizenship and National Identities in Literature, Popular Culture and Media. We are here for the fourth plenary session, which will be chaired by Dr. Rajkishore Mahana sir, Associate Professor, Department of English, Department of Anthropology, Manikeswari University, Bhavanipatna. Please, sir. We have two speakers with us, Dr. Asim Mandal, Associate Professor in English, presently attached with Department of English, Ramakrishna Mission, Residential College, Narendrapur, Kolkata. Please, sir. Our second speaker, Dr. Anita Rajendran, Associate Professor in English, Department of English, Gagi College, University of Delhi, will be joining online. As we are here for the fourth plenary session, it is my honor to introduce the chair of the session, Dr. Rajkishore Mahana sir. He is an Indian anthropologist and associate professor and head of the Department of Anthropology at Manikeswari University, Bhavanipatna. He also serves as director of the Research and Development Cell, officer on special duty to the Vice Chancellor and nodal officer for PM Usha. He earned his PhD in anthropology from the Madras Institute of Development Studies, University of Madras, and was a DAAD visiting fellow at the University of Hohenheim, Germany, a university gold medalist in MA, anthropology from the Utkal University. His doctoral work focused on development conflicts and tribal movements in Odisha. Dr. Mahana is the author of 4 books, including Negotiating Marginality, Conflicts over Tribal Development in India, 2019, and has published 22 research articles in national and international journals. His research centers on anthropology of development, tribal studies, governance, and indigenous rights. He has held academic positions at Utkal University, Calicut University, Kalinga Institute of Social Science, IIM Ahmedabad, and the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. He has received fellowship from DAAD, ICSSR, IDRC, CROP, and MIDS, and currently leads a major ICSSR funded project on the Forest Rights Act in Odisha. I welcome you, sir, and thanks for giving your consent for the chairing the session. With us, we have our first speaker, Dr. Asim Mandal, sir, Associate Professor in English. He is an Associate Professor in English, presently attached with the Department of English, Ramakrishna Mission, Residential College, Narendrapur, Kolkata. He has done his post-graduation in English literature from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and doctoral degree from University of Calcutta. He is also an alumnus of St. Xavier College, Kolkata, and Ramakrishna Mission. Dr. Mandal has delivered lectures as guest faculty at Diamond Harbour Women's University, Sanskrit College University, West Bengal State University, and also at the postgraduate section of Bethune College and Basanti Devi College of University, Calcutta. His research area is Western and Indian feminism. His doctoral thesis is on Rabindranath Tagore's transgressive women in his short story and novels. His specialized area of teaching is New English, Canadian, African, Australian, and Indian writing in English, William Wordsworth and English Romantic movements, modern literary theory, Derrida, Greenblatt, Bakhtin, Edward Said, Bhabha, and Michel Foucault. Translating studies, subaltern and Dalit studies. Dr. Mandal has authored many academic books in English literature of school level, graduate and postgraduate level. He is a poet of his own right. His poems, both in Bengali and in English, have been published in acclaimed literary magazines. He has been invited to read his poems in the platforms like Paschim Banga Kavita Utshav, organized by Sahitya Academy. He is regularly contributing his thoughtful essays and criticism in many peer-reviewed journals, nationally and internationally. He has been extensively delivering lectures, keynote addresses, and chairing the session at seminars, symposiums, workshops of national and international level at various colleges and universities. He has also been invited to deliver lecture in the various refresher and orientation courses for college and university teachers. Dr. Mandal is also a recipient of Presidential Award for NSS and adjudged as the Best Program Officer, University of Kolkata in the year 2019. Professor Mandal has a special love for the Sundarbans and he has been disseminating elementary education to the underprivileged kids in the area through his NGO, Shikhor, the breathing route, for the last 21 years. I welcome you, sir.
ওং সহনা ভবতু সহনু ভুনক্তু সহ বীর্যং কর্বাবহি তেজস্বী নাবধিতমস্তু মা বিদ্বিষাবহি ওম শান্তি শান্তি শান্তি. So good morning everybody. It's a huge privilege for me to be invited here as a plenary speaker, and good to see our students both the days, yesterday and today. They have come in big numbers and attending the seminar. And this is a very good academic practice, hosting such seminars. Students are, developing that argumentative, attitude, and also for the teachers, academicians, they are engaging such lectures and such symposiums. Now the issue that we are actually deliberating in this seminar, that is nationalism, nationality in the globalized world, and how it has been manifested in literature, in media, and also in the popular literature. Now, the moment we are talking about nationalism, the idea of border coming up, idea of passport coming up, idea of visa coming up. So nationalism. So can we close our eyes and think of the world without any passport, without any borders? World was once upon a time like this. There was no border, isn't it? But the idea of, the border idea is not very, ancient one. It's hardly 200 years. Before that, you can go anywhere without any passport. And our idea of Otithi Devo Bhava, Otithi is the guest. Guest is our God, isn't it? And nowadays, if guest stays for a long time, then what would happen then? The visa, the time of visa is getting over. What would happen then? And you are also thinking, the guest is not going. He is occupying the bed, he is, sharing the food, all these things, then you get agitated, get disturbed, isn't it? And look, such a long years ago, we have already evolved the idea, Bosudeva Kutumbakam. So whole world, the globalized world, whole world is a one single country, and we are all in good relation, we are all in friends. That the idea being fostered, manifested in Upanishad, in our scriptures, but that narrow boundaries or the extreme nationalism that nowadays we are talking about, and sometimes the whole world is actually suffering from that extreme polarized idea of nationalism. So my deliberation, my paper is actually Swami Vivekananda's Swadesh Bhavna. That is actually a rooted nationalism embracing transnational consciousness. My paper actually examines Swami Vivekananda's concept of Swadesh Bhavna as articulated through the Swadesh Mantra, his personal correspondences, and the celebrated lectures delivered from Colombo to Almora. Moving beyond narrow political interpretations of nationalism, the study argues the Vivekananda envisioned Swadesh as an ethical, spiritual consciousness rooted in India's civilizational ethos, yet inherently open to transnational human solidarity. Drawing upon Vedantic metaphysics, Vivekananda framed nationalism as a moral obligation grounded in service, character formation, and cultural self-respect, rather than territorial exclusivism or political antagonism. His writings consistently reject both cultural chauvinism and rootless cosmopolitanism, proposing instead a dialogic engagement between India and the world. Through close textual analysis, this paper demonstrates how Vivekananda reconciled indigenous spiritual rootedness with global humanism, anticipating contemporary debates on nationalism, globalization, and cultural identity. The study further highlights the relevance of his thought in addressing present-day crisis of exclusionary nationalism and ethical fragmentation. By situating Swadesh Bhavna within Vivekananda's broader philosophical and social vision, the paper establishes his nationalism as a dynamic, inclusive, and transnationally oriented framework that remains intellectually and ethically significant in the 21st century. So the rise of modern Indian civilization or modern Indian nationalism cannot be understood as a singular political movement alone. It emerged from a layered and often uneasy interaction between colonial domination, indigenous cultural traditions, and circulating global ideas. Both British colonial rule not only imposed administrative control, but also disrupted India's historical self-understanding by systematically questioning the worth of its civilization, knowledge systems, and moral frameworks. In response, Indian nationalism developed along multiple trajectories, some political, some cultural, and others deeply psychological. It is within this complex historical moment that Swami Vivekananda occupies a distinctive and intellectually significant position. Vivekananda's contribution to nationalist thought lies in his refusal to reduce nationalism to political agitation or institutional reform alone. While he recognized the necessity of political freedom, he consistently argued that liberation devoid of moral strength, cultural confidence, and spiritual self-awareness would be incomplete and unstable. For him, the crisis of colonial India was not merely external but internal, a crisis of self-belief produced by prolonged cultural subjugation. Consequently, his understanding of Swadesh extends far beyond territorial allegiance or political sovereignty. It signifies a comprehensive ethical and cultural orientation through which individuals rediscover dignity, responsibility, and purpose within their own civilizational inheritance. Unlike many nationalist leaders who focused primarily on constitutional reforms, representative institutions, or mass mobilization, Vivekananda directed his attention towards the psychological and moral consequences of colonial rule. He identified fear, imitation, and self-doubt as the most corrosive legacies of imperial domination. Political independence, he warned, would remain hollow if it merely replaced foreign authority with indigenous elites while leaving intact the habits of intellectual dependency. Thus, his nationalism, Vivekananda's nationalism, was civilizational in scope, ethical in substance, and spiritual in orientation rather than narrowly political in character. Vivekananda's Swadesh Bhavana is best understood as a form of cultural self-discovery or cultural self-recovery. It calls for an inward turn, not as withdrawal from the world, but as a necessary process of self-recognition. He argued Indians to engage critically with their own traditions, neither romanticizing the past nor rejecting it under colonial influence. This rootedness was not meant to produce isolation or cultural rigidity. On the contrary, Vivekananda consistently affirmed the value of learning from other cultures, particularly in the domains of science and organization and social efficiency. What he rejected was uncritical imitation that eroded indigenous moral confidence. This balance between rootedness and openness constitutes one of the most original aspects of Vivekananda's nationalist thought. His engagement with the West, shaped by extensive travel and sustained dialogue, did not dilute his commitment to Indian spiritual tradition. Instead, it sharpened his awareness of India's potential contribution to the world. He believed that every civilization carries a distinctive ethical vocation, and India's historical strength lay in its spiritual universalism, philosophical depth, and capacity for ethical synthesis. In this sense, Swadesh was never opposed to global humanism. It was very ground from which a meaningful engagement with humanity could re-emerge. The Swadesh Mantra, his letters, and the lectures delivered from Colombo to Almora collectively reveal a coherent vision of nationalism grounded in service, character formation, and social responsibility. Vivekananda repeatedly insisted that devotion to the nation must express itself through concrete work among the poor, the marginalized, and the neglected. The nation for him was not an abstract entity, but a living moral community whose regeneration depended upon compassion, discipline, and ethical labor. Through this synthesis of culture, through this synthesis of cultural rootedness and transnational concern, Vivekananda anticipated many contemporary debates surrounding globalization, identity, and ethical citizenship. His vision challenges both exclusionary nationalism and rootless cosmopolitanism, offering instead a model of belonging that is simultaneously local in grounding and universal in orientation. In an increasingly interconnected yet fractured world, Vivekananda's Swadesh Bhavana remains a powerful framework for rethinking nationalism as an ethical practice rather than a political slogan. Late 19th century India was marked by economic exploitation, political marginalization, and cultural devaluation under British rule. Colonial discourse systematically represented Indian civilization as inferior and stagnant, thereby undermining indigenous self-confidence. This intellectual environment produced what Vivekananda described as, I quote, loss of faith in oneself. At the same time, unquote, at the same time, Western education introduced new forms of rational inquiry, scientific reasoning, and political thought. While these developments enabled social critique, they also risked cultural alienation. Many reformers oscillated between critical westernization, uncritical westernization, and defensive traditionalism. Vivekananda navigated this intellectual terrain with remarkable balance. Educated in Western philosophy and science, he remained deeply rooted in Vedantic spirituality. According to Rambachan Vivekananda, short, I quote, a creative interpretation of tradition that could respond to modern challenges, unquote. His nationalism thus emerged from a dialogue between tradition and modernity rather than their opposition. The philosophical basis of Vivekananda's nationalism lies in Advaita Vedanta, particularly the doctrine of the unity of existence. This metaphysical principle affirms that all beings participate in shared spiritual reality. Consequently, any form of nationalism based on exclusion or hatred violates this fundamental unity. For Vivekananda, love for one's nation must be harmonized with the love for humanity. He maintained that, I quote, the same soul runs through all, unquote, making ethical universalism inseparable from national loyalty. Patriotism, divorced from compassion, degenerates into selfishness. Furthermore, Vedantic self-realization fosters inner freedom and self-confidence. This spiritual autonomy becomes the foundation of collective regeneration. National strength, in his view, originates in individual moral discipline and spiritual awareness. The Swadesh Bhavana represents not merely political sentiment, but an ethical spiritual orientation grounded in metaphysical insight. The Swadesh mantra, that is, most of the schools and colleges used to start. The Swadesh mantra occupies a central place in Swami Vivekananda's understanding of nationalism, not as a political doctrine, but as a moral and ethical orientation. Unlike nationalist formulations that emphasize territorial sovereignty or institutional authority, Vivekananda's vision of Swadesh is rooted in responsibility, service, and character. He consistently rejected the idea that love for one's country could be reduced to emotional slogans or symbolic gestures. For him, nationalism demanded visible commitment to social transformation grounded in everyday labor and ethical conduct. Vivekananda's insistence that, I quote, they alone live who live for others. They alone live who live for others, encapsulates the moral core of his nationalism. Patriotism in this formulation is inseparable from altruism. It is not defined by who one opposes, but by whom one serves. The nation is not an abstract entity or romantic ideal, but a collective body marked by suffering, deprivation, and inequality. To serve the nation, therefore, is to confront poverty, ignorance, and social injustice directly rather than celebrate national identity in isolation from lived realities. So, this ethical conception fundamentally reshapes the meaning of political freedom. Vivekananda viewed independence as incomplete if it merely transferred power without transforming social conditions. Poverty, illiteracy, caste exclusion, and social stagnation were not peripheral issues, but central national concerns. In locating nationalism within an ethical mission, Vivekananda shifted the focus from governance alone to the moral health of society. So, equally significant is Vivekananda's critique of superficial patriotism. He warned against emotional excess that lacked discipline or purpose, arguing that such sentiment often concealed inaction. National devotion, he maintained, requires sustained effort, personal sacrifice, and moral self discipline rather than momentary enthusiasm. This emphasis on discipline reflects his broader belief that national regeneration begins with individual transformation. Without integrity, courage, and self control at the personal level, collective progress remains fragile. Swadesh Mantra thus rejects symbolic politics in favor of what may be described as transformative praxis. Service becomes the primary mode through which national consciousness is expressed. Education, health, labor, and social reform are elevated to national duties rather than charitable activities. This ethical nationalism demands that individuals view their work, whether intellectual, manual, or spiritual, as a contribution to collective well being. Vivekananda nationalism does not define itself through hostility towards others. He repeatedly cautioned against hatred in the name of national pride, insisting that such attitudes contradict both ethical reason and spiritual truth. Service to one's country acquires legitimacy only when it aligns with the broader welfare of humanity. Nationalism, in this sense, becomes an exercise in moral stewardship rather than exclusionary assertion. So, I would like to conclude my paper by saying that uh, do we qualify to conduct this seminar in English? Because the moment we talk in a particular language, we actually pushing through the images that is actually home of that particular language. So when we discuss about our nationalism, we should qualify ourselves to talk or to speak in the languages, the diverse languages in India. And that is why in our constitution, India means Bharat. That means it allows, it accommodates all the diversity in India, not that extreme nationalism that one nation and one dash 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 and dash. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Here we listen to our first speaker, Dr. Asim Mandal, sir, Associate Professor in English, who gave his thoughtful talk on Swami Vivekananda's Swadesh Bhavana, a rooted nationalism embracing transnational consciousness. Thank you, sir. Now we are moving over to our second speaker. Hello. Ma'am, can you hear us, ma'am? Anita, ma'am? Hello. Ma'am, unmute yourself. Ma'am, unmute yourself.
One of them is a film that we have seen called Upia, which came out in 2023. And the other is a graphic novel called Absolute Jafar. So this is by Sarna Banerjee and came out in 2026. So the basic premise that I will be examining is the concept of nationalism itself, which is why is it existed and how what are ways in so, the moment I say why is it existence, we have to say that nationalism is a value response, right? You don't want to succeed, you want to keep it in something. And in many ways, nationalism premises that the people who are part of a group have certain ethical mutual responsibility, ethical responsibilities that are expressed in them. Plus, there are also a set of politically valued actions or politically valued stances that relate to protest. So, we'll examine these in the course of my talk through the text itself. So, first up, let's look at this is Kuya. You may or may not have seen this, so I will summarize this talk first. So, this is a film which anchors a female spy as the lead report. And her sexuality is a little bit less than hers. So, she is closer to destiny. She is wife of the neighborhood. Her husband is familiar with the fact that she is destined. In fact, they're not together. But both of them haven't worked together, haven't been, professional things. are very well aware that tension and things and identifying the identifying sexuality on they have a guidance and it's not dedicated by at one point an actor in Bangladesh. She has a cover as but she's actually a highly funded to by work. And she needs one she has another foundation by someone who ends up giving applications of transnational yoga strategy. So this is that what that has been sort of what is the English and Finnish. So what do you do, for example, our particular in direct conflict with our national rights, if we were to discuss something about the number of the person as a person who is found the whole death. So if an interest that would contribute to politics, then what happens? To be with like this, how we educate that so we went back in terms of the overall action. Now, this film I contrast with the graphic similar story, but very different. We have to compare BRIDA, which has different by Apple. So the way the social down is through this very pragmatic statement, depending on the kind of walking, what the like to do, back, but each from the average of the and what happens one day we have very then among the things what Pakistan that was its own independent of people much time visit to the night to waiting for long hours for spend to do this. And then eventually and with Pakistan wife, they managed. So they have a time who is Indian but born in Pearl. So that one is like. And I was carried very very important. He said, you know, whether she would like you will have and then you are fine. Will actually be a Christian. Like one day, I got nothing. Right. Closer. Is this more audible? Yes. Are things clearer now?
Yes.
Yeah, better. Okay. So I think it's something to do with our Wi-Fi. So if I'm not audible, please write in the chat box here. I will immediately change my location. So I'm not sure how much you have heard, but the important thing is the graphic graphic narrative is having an affair with a quote-unquote national, that with an enemy national, that is with a Pakistani. So the difficulties of trying to have offspring or trying to, figure out the citizenship of your offspring and how to actually communicate between family members located on either sides of the border, etc., are part of both the comic fodder as well as the anxiety for the narrative. So, effectively, what we see in both these things is that, number one, nobody wants to dispense with their national position or their national identity. So, nationalism, in other words, belonging membership to a nation, being part of a group with whom you have, as there is put a small reservoir of cultural memories is very important to. So the point at which the part of the narrative that I was explaining before introduction, sorry for that, was that the friend of the protagonist of the graphic narrative tells him, your son is bound to play cricket, and no matter what he does during the game of cricket, maybe he scores a six, maybe he has a hit wicket, maybe he bowls a low ball, maybe he gets stumped, maybe he takes a wicket, but as she puts it, someone in the audience is bound to stand up and roar Gaddar, because the boy is going to be a dual national, right? He's going to be either Indian or Pakistani, depending on which ethnicity the provision at given point. But because he comes from both places, what is his identity? Who can claim more of his loyalty becomes a very rich and fertile kind of conundrum, which is of course unresolvable. So, and that's how it plays out. The protagonist has a son indeed, and fortunately, because he lives in Berlin, he doesn't pretty much cricket, and the narrative doesn't reach that point. The boy doesn't grow up that much, but effectively, we can see the conundrum playing out, right? What is a nation? Is a nation a group of people that are connected only by common cultural memories? If they are indeed collectively united by cultural memories, then Indians and Pakistanis, or for that matter, Indians and Bangladeshis, right? Then we come to the other question of political duties, common good that unites us all, etc., etc. Right? So in that case, we come to the question of citizenship. So if citizenship is inherently valuable, especially in today's date, we can see what happens to citizens of various states if they are misidentified or if their citizenship is inherently less valuable than that of others in a given environment, in the context of ICE, etc., in the state, and in many other contexts also. So, how do we actually value individuals? So, is individual value guaranteed by your nationhood? Can your nation protect you in all circumstances? Is that protection due and legitimate, etc.? Questions that are fertile and important to all of us. So, when we look at this narrative, the graphic narrative, Absolute Jafar incidentally is named after, unfortunately, after Mir Jafar. We know who Mir Jafar is, right? So, culturally, the name Jafar itself also inherently carries the values of etc. So obviously this is a plot point in the So if you are a person loaded with these kinds of meanings, right? If you're named thus, if you problematically stand between two different cultural groups or two different nation groups, two different warring citizen groups, but of course you didn't have a choice, Jafar as a child. So what does that say about our duties or the rest of our duties as guardians and so on? If we go back to the Vishal Bhardwaj film Khufia, there the duties performed by our female spy, the lesbian Krishna, are such that she neglects her motherhood duties, but her husband steps in, fills the role, etc. So if the nation has to be carefully maintained and policed and looked out for, right? Who will do these duties? And if these duties are going to be at odds with people's emotional worlds, then how do we regulate nationhood? How does it happen that, we are able to say that we are good citizens, etc.? So overall, if we try to theorize, if a nation is a place that is, if nationhood is defined as a place where all the participants of the nation are inherently equal, right? If they are not, if they do not belong to a previous hierarchy, if they don't belong to a hierarchy at all, in fact, with the result that some of them are above or more equal than others, and some of them are below and less equal, etc. If nationhood itself guarantees that there will be less inequality, okay, then nationhood becomes an extremely valuable concept for a variety of people groups, right? Whether that group is homosexuals, whether that group belongs to various kinds of minority religious identity, etc., etc. So, if it is valuable, and it is valuable, if it is valuable, then the ethical duties of people who belong to the nation, how are they to be quantified, right? So, what are the things that people do in order to help others who belong to the nation? What are the things that people do in order to maintain the nation? We can see a lot of duties performed in Kufia. So, Tabu's character, that is Krishna, does not perform the duties of motherhood, but instead she performs the duties of looking after the boundaries of the Indian nation. So, looking after the boundaries of the Indian nation means identifying spies, modes, overt warfare, etc. Before it disintegrates into overt violence or loss of life and limb, etc. Some of that does happen in the film, but she goes out of her way as the hero of the prevent these things as far as possible. So, ethical duties and the citizens perform these ethical duties. So, they can actually be a very important part of popular culture, as you can see in films like Dhurandhar, where there might be a considerable lack of nuance also, but the ethical duties of what it means to be a member of the nation are very significantly part of public discourse. Political duties, such as, for example, if there are resources that can be distributed equally or at least equitably so that various groups can benefit from them, those can actually be a little bit more contentious and harder to resolve in the public sphere. So, for example, in about questions of immigration or questions of what are the rights of people who have immigrated into a nation group. So there it can be actually very difficult for popular cultures to be able to say that X group or Y group should be given as many resources as the rest of us have. So the boundaries between the rights of various groups, the various kinds of categories of members of a nation are being renegotiated and re-theorized in a variety of texts. And these are just two examples. So, effectively, when we look at this theme, which it appears in so many kinds of texts and creates a number of interesting points of reflection. So, if everybody deserves equal rights, then who is willing to give up some rights in order to restore the balance in case resources adequate, etc. That's another major question that keeps popping up. So I wonder, are we good on time? How much more time do we have?
Ma'am, next time, please.
Okay, alright. So I just go back then to Absolute Jafar. So in Absolute Jafar, the protagonist Rigu is relatively upper class. So he gets to actually do his peripatetic nation wandering, nation establishing walks. He goes all over Delhi, for example, and this is Delhi of the 90s. So the kind of cultural scene that he inhabits, the kind of places that he sees, the kind of people that he interacts with, the cultural cognoscenti and the elite actually. So this shapes for us as readers a vision of Delhi that is obviously very different from the kind of space that we would get to see if if you were not an upper class and also, I think, upper caste person. We can see an alternative to that Delhi space in another graphic novel. This one is The Song of the Sky Tree, and it's written by Nandita Basu. So Nandita Basu's text is also set in the same period. It's the same Delhi era and of the 90s. But Nandita's protagonist is a young lesbian or asexual. She's not very sure which of the two she is. A veterinarian. So she treats animals. So we can see in this graphic novel, it's several parts of it are drawn in Delhi. But it's very interesting how the Delhi of Sarnath Banerjee's protagonist is the cultural, the valuable cultural goods of India reflected in various pages. Whereas in Nandita Basu's text, it is the middle class Delhi. The Delhi of, say, Vasant Kunj, or the Delhi of your rented house, or the Delhi where, your plumbing leaks and you have problems, etc. These problems also figure in Absolute Jafar. For example, the protagonist's wife being Muslim plus Pakistani, they find it very difficult to get a house rented to them. So these problems are part of the narrative. They of course find it very difficult to get a visa or return to India, etc. They are woven into the narrative. But even so, the idea of India, okay, the idea of a place which is special, which they want to be in, which they keep returning to, which they are not willing to give up despite whatever else happens. At one point, the text describes the protagonist's wife's family as like an international bank. They have a global presence. The Pakistani diaspora is present practically everywhere, all over the world, whether it's Cape Town or Australia or Germany or wherever you like. Later on, they also go and live in Germany. So the idea that a nation has something of lasting cultural value to the inhabitants of that nation, or even to people who might end up like the protagonist's spouse, who end up being, as a government bureaucrat puts it in the novel, the pride of the nation. So, if a certain kind of picture of the nation, of the space of the nation, emerges through a variety of texts, and if that picture is quite upper class, upper caste, and very masculine, that's Sarnath Banerjee's picture. And you contrast that with the picture that emerges in a graphic novel like The Song of the Sky Tree, or the picture that emerges in like Fia, we can see that the space of the nation is not just contested, but also added to, is redrawn by the various identity locations of the participants in that shared creation of nationhood. So Tabu's Krishna, who's lesbian, or Nandita Basu's protagonist, who is questioning kind of, and she's a vet, so she's always dealing with animals whose rights are being disrespected by human beings, etc. So the changing ways in which the space that we call, the territory that we call the nation is dealing with are interesting to us, right? Because territory is central to any nation. If the nation is self-determining, then it does have its own territory, right? So the cultural terrain of what emerges as valuable is marked in different texts in different ways. In texts like Nandita Basu's, it is the space for the female protagonist to be able to be self-determining, to be economically independent, to actually have a certain measure of autonomy in whether she should even have a partner, male or female. Whereas in a text like Absolute Jafar, these freedoms are already taken for granted in the masculine protagonist's life story. There is absolutely no wonderment about whether he can exist, whether he needs to change in some way because he has married a Pakistani national, etc. So when he ends up in Pakistan on visits to his wife's family, they live in a gated compound. So that again tells you the wife's economic and social location, extremely privileged. So the man is able to wear a synthetic salwar kameez and walk around Karachi. He walks around everywhere, no matter the hour of the day or night, any year. So the sense of absolute freedom that us, it seems as you will sense to be an enviable freedom that certain kinds of inhabitants of the state possess, of the nation possess, right? That brings us to the question of what kind of political freedoms should all the various inhabitants of any nation have, right? So will they inevitably be equal freedoms? Will they be different? Can these freedoms be enhanced? Will the enhancement of these freedoms lead to other people's freedoms being taken away? Right? So these kinds of questions, when one tries to analyze in ways that go beyond the individual things, one realizes that the positions taken by what we could call liberal nationalism are actually the positions that we more or less will end up with, which is that we try to think that it's possible to widen the sphere, but is the sphere going to widen without conflict? Will there be, power struggles? Of course, there will be power struggles, right? And the articulation of these various kinds of power struggles perhaps is rich and, very dynamic, very ever-changing in a lot of different things. So, with that, maybe I will wind up. I will just wrap it up by saying that if themes of nationalism were insignificant, we would not be repeatedly taking them up. We seem to be repeatedly taking them up in all kinds of contexts, especially given our extraordinary global cosmopolitan life of today. For example, I am talking from Delhi to Odisha, and in that sense, given that we don't seem to be constrained by the geographical anymore, perhaps it is relevant and significant that we are indeed thinking what makes the nation. So I think with that I will stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So here we are to listen to our second speaker, Dr. Anita ma'am, who spoke on Indianness and mass culture in literature, cinema and graphic novels. Now I request the chair of the session, Dr. Askisar Mahana sir, to carry out the discussion and give his valuable remarks.
Thank you. We had two very interesting papers. I think I am audible on this. Okay. At the one end, this is better. At the one end, we had Vivekananda's spirituality. On the other hand, we had popular mass culture. Two papers were very interesting. So I, as a chair, I have the duty to sum up little bit. And the paper by Asim Mandal sir was very interesting, where he argued that Swami Vivekananda's idea of Swadeshi Bhavana promotes a cultural impact, yet globally our nationalism, where he was trying to quote Vivekananda saying Swadesh was never opposite to globalism. It briefly and likely embraces nationalism not as isolationist but as spiritually expansive and ethically universal. Critically, however, such a model risks idealism, cultural unity while understanding internal hierarchies of caste, gender, class within this nationalism. So I have a small question. Can a spiritually grounded nationalism genuinely remain inclusive in a politically polarized and a materially unequal society? I know you also hinted somewhere with kind of guidance saying that nationalism as a ethical practice, or even you quoted Vivekananda saying they only live who lives for other. But for me, these are ethically sounds good, and this is theoretically very nice to say, but these are again rhetorics. Do we have something very realistic, practical solution where we can make nationalism a ethical practice?
Yes, I have something to add to this question.
Yeah.
My question is part of your question.
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning, all. So my question is that new millennium, new kind of new Vedantism is emerging, and it is being sold in the Western world. So correct in the name of yoga and spirituality. But Indian philosophy or Eastern spirituality never progressed for, never aimed for materialistic gain. Always it believed in the philosophy of Sarve Bhavan Sukhina. So how do you think this, the changing dynamics, we are selling Vedantic philosophy, sugar-coated in spirituality or yoga to the Western world?
Swamiji is very, very practical. While he is talking all these things, he is lecturing in the public platform. And what he did not achieve in his life, he did not preach that. And he has cited the practical examples. And that's why, he understood the lacuna, the shortcomings in the so-called ongoing colonial education, and that's why he has envisioned another model of education that he has started in Belur, as it has been fostered, manifested as Ramakrishna Mission, and throughout India and all over the globe now it is 272 centers disseminating the education of Swamiji, how you have to be fast, I quote, be and make. If you are a teacher, you have to be teacher first, then go to teach. So, in which the teacher is? Teacher means who is always inclined to help others. Otherwise, if you are not qualified enough to be a teacher, it's not that marking some information, getting some degrees, you are qualified for teacher. It's not that. Swamiji is saying that. So it looks fine when you are actually wearing or putting on uniform. That looks fine that you are belonging to Manikeshwari University. But if that the ethos of Manikeshwari University does not grow within, then mere uniform will not help you. So one Manikeshwari University here, there are so many Manikeshwari University will go out when they will pass out, bringing your ethos. So that's the thing the Ramakrishna Mission is doing throughout the globe. The Ramakrishna ethos, the Vivekananda ethos, they are carrying for wherever you go, in the offices, in the schools, in the colleges, you will feel the different. That they are living in a sort of world. Their understanding of the world is much more clear, much more comprehensive. And that what the sir has told, Sandeep sir has asked me. Your Sandeep sir?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, Sandeep sir has asked me. There will be no new Vedanta. Vedanta is one. There cannot be a new Vedanta in one. Just like the Bollywood movie, they are selling Indianness outside India, making money, Hindu movies, and they are showing that pan-Indian wedding, just like, Punjabi wedding, Bhangra dance, something like that. We have different wedding in Odisha. Even in Odisha, there are so many parts, they have their own way of the tradition of wedding. But you see, whenever the other people, they are looking at wedding, Indian wedding, they are thinking of that the Hindu movie that is showing, Shahrukh Khan is showing the wedding, that is the wedding that every Indian is doing. It's not that actually. So you have to understand that
each and everybody, and my paper is on that particular thing, that you have to be proud from within what you are, what you have. That is the self-respect, self-dignity. Then you will go outside. You have to understand the model of civilization. That civilization introduced by European model, that is all about speed and thinking of which civilization is stable, sustainable. Because our life is 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, at the most 90 years. And we want to make things happen or see things happen in our life. And that's why we are impatient to see everything in my life. My Manifesto University is young university, hardly 7 years old, 6 years old. But some administrator, if they want to see, tomorrow it will be Presidency University or something like that, don't be. Maybe not in your lifetime, you cannot see the peak of Manifesto University, but the process is important. Our scripture, our education, Vedantic education says that journey is important, not the goal. So, means is not the important, the way is important. How we achieve that means, that is important. So that is the point. And the people in Mahabharata, it is saying that the person who is selling or preaching religion for achieving some things, that means he is not spiritual. Spiritual and religious is two different things. You could be a spiritual person without being religious. Okay, so the person who is selling religion, he is businessman in terms of the field of religion. He is not a spiritual person. Okay, and when you are a spiritual person, you feel from within that your heart is much bigger than the common people, than the people around you, and not that you feel that those people who are not helping, they are bad. So that's the thing, that you love all the people. Because of that, Advaita Vedanta, that thinking is that each and everybody outside you is the extension of you. They will feel love for all. Okay, it's like even when you get up in the morning, in your skills and in your Advaita Vedanta, that you have to preach the mantra just unconsciously. Whenever you trot on the road, on the path, on the meeting, you are actually, for your life, there are so many insects, so many animals. In each moment they are trying to make you alive. So be grateful to get this life. Thank you.
Asim sir, it was a nice presentation, and the presentation of Madam too. Sir told about transnationalism and polarization of nationalism. You also told about Tagore's superficial patriotism. You have mentioned somewhere.
I did not utter that superficial. I did not utter Tagore.
His view that Swadesh was not opposed to global humanism. My question is, how do you differentiate between the present concept of political, ethical and spiritual nationalism or national consciousness from the concepts of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, Vishwavijayi emperors, Prithviraj, and colonial rule across the world, across the globe. And if you differentiate between the two, don't you think that there is something, the concept of Indian empowerment or India ruling over the world, which in other way is Indian nationalism?
It's a big question, and you have put forward. The thing is that there are so many layers and parts in your question. First thing is that whatever media, whatever print media, social media, television, they are showing, they are actually the business houses. They are making the narratives. go to any villages of India, you feel the Vasudeva Kutumbakam. The idea of Vasudeva Kutumbakam is there. They won't give you any cash money, but they will feel you that you are the relative. They can feed you for days to come. That is what the rootedness. Actually, over the years, this tradition has evolved in this, soil. It's not that we are territorial, that, all the European myth, European construction of India, they talked about. We are not a geographical space. India is not a geographical space. India is a spiritual concept. We have differences, but we are together. We are connected. And we love to address that. We love to address that. What Boogie was saying, Boogie was thinking, that depolarizing mind. That means the moment I started speaking in Odia, I actually subscribed to the Odia culture, because every language carries her own images. Language is the most potent weapon for our colonial masters. That we were talking about. India has never ventured outside India to grab the space, geographical space. There are so many years in the history witnessed that so many, kings outside India, they attacked India, they looted us, but sometimes we are, live low, we feel we are destroyed, but from there, once again, India has answered. And sometimes it happens. So just to, Vivekananda was saying that, just to believe your own self, that you can. That's the thing. If you want to be a good one, you will be a good one. Just have the self-reliance, and self-respect, and self-confidence. That's it.
Thank you, sir. So I think there are a few questions from online. So I request Amarendra sir to read out the questions, if it is for Anita Ma'am.
There are two questions for Anita ma'am, one by Sanjay Sahu sir and another by Sarvadi Banerjee. So first question by Sanjay sir. If social categorization is necessary to secure rights, recognition and dignity, yet the same identities can produce exclusion, stigma and hierarchy. How should we understand and negotiate this double-edged function of identity? Over to you.
I think this is an excellent question, because the concept note for a seminar also kind of gestures towards that. Jasbir Kaur is mentioned there, over nationalisms, for example. Because number one, like I said, in the Vishal Bharadwaj film, it is the queer woman who helps actually maintain these national boundaries, these national identities, and fundamentally what comes to be national security. And this helps them to articulate one question which is very prominent in queer studies, which is to what extent can a thing be visibilized without it encountering so much homophobia that the thing itself is destroyed. Okay? So this is a challenge within all kinds of queer studies. Like, if a thing becomes visible and it attracts hate, then would it be worth making that thing visible is one question. Of course, we know the answer. If any being has to express an integrated and authentic identity, that being should be allowed to be visible. It has to, it would come out in front of the game, right? So if we don't have identity categorizations which are broad and divergent, then clearly many of these identities will be suppressed. Of course, there will never be any easy agreement on various kinds of identities, right? At what point, for example, even in our country, at what point do migrant immigrants from the north get accepted in the south or vice versa, right? We've seen all of these questions frame out in terms of if a person is culturally welcome but they don't learn the language, if economic capital ends up being concentrated on a particular ethnic group, etc. We've seen all these different kinds of conflicts. So are we going to say that because we are afraid of these conflicts, we will not allow change to happen? That's also not feasible, not possible, right? So if effectively true hybridity has to form, then it would have to be a kind of inclusive liberalism that would happen, right? There has to be a framework inclusive enough to let these identities express themselves and then to transform, reabsorb, etc. So in that sense, perhaps these are dynamic and influx identities. And above all, the model of maintaining the inner and the outer spaces as separate, right? Like the public space as the only space where the national is expressed and the private space of the home as a place free of these dilemmas. That careful binarization is completely exploded and subverted here. So without a socially visible category, right? How is the discourse of citizenship? How is the discourse of right? Like if democracy is expressed through the concept of nation, right? And that's where the concept of nation and a concept like patriotism part ways. Nation does guarantee that there is a certain kind of equality between the various parts. So the nation is in a sense a kind of a vehicle perhaps for various kinds of democratic ideations. So if self-expression, some kind of authenticity, identity, is to be possible, then even if there is exclusion, stigma, and even if there are hierarchies, there will also be contests to subvert and redraw hierarchies. And in that sense, all nations are essentially perhaps in a kind of equilibrium of power. There are power relations rather than fixed settlements or fixed hierarchies. That's what I would think is the relationship between various kinds of identity structures.
Thank you, ma'am.
Should I take on to the next question?
Yes, sir. There is another question. The second question is by Sarvani Banerjee, that is Indianness evolving towards hybridity or towards cultural consolidation? What is your point of view?
Like the million right? So, I hope I'm audible and my voice is echoing from the previous speaker, so it's a second. So effectively, if people from all nations feel their nation is the best, and obviously for logical reasons, that's hardly even possible, right? Like all nations have their own faith, all nations have their own value and worth to the members of that nation, right? We understand and we have to accept the fact that mutual domination is just going to lead to assured self-destruction. Yet, however, given that the struggle for power, struggle for some kind of ability to hold your own in real and it has material consequences, there would be a tendency to say that, oh look, my nation is the best, to be hyper-nationalistic, etc. But as analytical beings, we, I think, will have to accept that what is Indian today, what is understood to be Indian today is perhaps a little bit different from maybe how we understood Indianness, say, 50 years ago, or even further different from how we understood Indianness, say, 200 years ago. So if we look at, for example, a novel like Amitav Ghosh's Sea of Poppy, so as historical fiction, we can see various kinds of people emerging from various recognizable geographies in India, and we can culturally identify with all of them as of places that are recognized as Indian today. But at that time, that overarching concept of Hindustani, it did not exist. It's the same, right? Yet, because there is this cultural sensitivity, there is this ability to recognize that we have shared experiences. We are normally within the sphere of what we would call individuals, right? But the kind of political rights, kind of citizenship that we identify with India today did not exist there. So, of course, the identity does evolve, of course, the identity does emerge, and today, if it's an identity that people want to keep, if it's an identity that people value and revere, then they process it in particular ways, such as, for example, retaining citizenship. As long as the world has various kinds of, say, passports which have different hierarchies, the value that individuals statistically attest for their citizenship will be different. We can see that in films like the Donkey with Shah Rukh Khan and Taski Pannu, right? That someone chooses to be a migrant, someone chooses not to be a migrant. And these choices are not within very often within individual acts alone. So identities in all senses, therefore, are extremely difficult to capture, extremely difficult to retain, and extremely fluid, while at the same time looking completely static all the time, right? So this existence within the state of flux, I think, is what we should keep uppermost when we think about questions like hybrid. So, if a nation is okay with its cultural values being totally transformed, no nation is, we know that, versus if a nation is willing to let in certain values, right? What are those certain values? How are they being negotiated? We see that in front of us. So I think in that way, once again, there is there's like a dance between what you call hybridity and what we could call cultural consolidation. They are partners in kind of ritual whose effects only come out a lot later. So Indians today of almost all stripes speak English, but once upon a time that was certainly not the case. And even today there are contests about what kind of language we should all be speaking in fora like this. So like that, what values will finally, emerge triumphant is a matter of sometimes easy dialogue, very often of sharply contested subversion. Different ideas.
Thank you, both the speakers. It was very wonderful papers. Do we have any more questions? Okay. If not, then I thank both these paper presenters for wonderful papers. Thank you.
Now I request Umesh sir to felicitate our chair and offer the certificate of appreciation to our speaker. I also welcome Tapaluthu sir. Offer this certificate of appreciation to our speaker, Asim Mondal sir. And I request now to felicitate our chair of the session, Dr. Ashutosh Mahana.
Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and giving your consent to chair the session, and also to
Our speaker, Dr. Asim Mondal, sir, for giving a thoughtful talk on the topic. Uh, we I also thank Anita ma'am for giving her valuable time and to our students for this seminar. Uh, with this, we are at the end of this plenary session. We had 3 plenary yesterday, chaired by Sanjeev Sahu sir, Janna ma'am, and Jadav Sahu sir. And today we had the last session chaired by Rajkeshwar Mahana sir. With this, we are concluding our plenary. Now we are moving to our technical session in both offline and in online. We are having around 6 plenaries, 6 technical session in offline mode and 9 in online mode. I request the students like so we are having 3 offline session in 3 venue are the parallel sessions, 3 parallel sessions. One is at the Commerce Auditorium. Then second one is at room number 14 in front of the Botanical Garden and here in Yuva Sanskar Hall. So I request the PG students to sit here and UG first year to move to the Commerce block and UG second year and UG third year to the room number 14. And the respective paper presenters and the moderators are requested to take their charge and do the needful. The session will begin after the tea break. So kindly have your tea and snacks. Thank you everyone. Thank you the technician. Thank you those who were managing this technical part, Bright. Thank you the AKN News for telecasting our program live in the YouTube channel for consecutively 2 days. Also I thank all the dignitaries, students, volunteers, faculty members for your support and the love. Thank you everyone.